Hi, my name is Simon Howard and I'm a Solutions Architect at Micro Focus. So this video is all about how you review the results of a static analysis you performed on some code using Fortify on demand. What you see in front of you right now is a list of applications that have been scanned on Fortify on demand, in fact in a tenant. And this particular tenant has 128 applications that it knows about. One of them is called WG. I can quickly go and look at the results for the WG application by clicking on this. Now I go to another view that shows me the releases that Fortify on demand knows for this application. There are 5, 1.0 through to 5.0. And in fact, 4 of them have been scanned already. Version 1.0 has not been assessed. Now for version 5.0, I want you to imagine that we have just scanned that application and we've got the results back. We got a notification by email and we now know the results are available. So we're here looking at the results. When we scan an application, we categorize the results, the vulnerabilities and the issues that are found into 4 categories: critical, high, medium and low. So we know straight away there are 357 critical level vulnerabilities that have been identified for version 5.0 of the application, and I can go look at them by just clicking this red box here. Now in this view I've got several areas. In this left hand area over here I'm grouping my vulnerabilities. I can group them by category like you're seeing right now, or I could change that to group by OWASP 2017 categorization, for example. So review is going to get refreshed, and now you can see I'm now grouping by categorization of A1 through to A7. I know, for example, there are 108 issues of the A7 category. But I prefer personally to group them by category because when I do so, it makes it much easier to see, for example, that there are 27 SQL injections, but you can group them in lots of different ways. That's the key thing to know. Now, right now, we've got this particular vulnerability selected. I'm going to select another one to show what happens. So we know there is a command injection vulnerability occurring in the file wsdl scan-in.java at line 148. You will have noticed, if you're quickly observant, that there is another view and that refreshed when I selected that vulnerability. This area here always shows me details about the particular vulnerabilities selected. And in fact, this area breaks down into 6 tabs: vulnerability, recommendations, code, diagram, more evidence, and history. So for any vulnerability, within this vulnerability tab, I will see breakdown as follows: summary, paragraph, and then an explanation area. And then some more information at the bottom about standards and best practice and this instance ID and rule ID. More on that in a minute. In this summary section, provides a very quick overview of what we've detected. So it says that the method access WG service in wsdl scan-in.java calls a method called set operation name with a command built from untrusted data. So alarm bells might ring straight away, right? And this can cause the program to execute malicious commands on behalf of an attacker. So in those 2 sentences alone, I know what potentially has been found. Now, depending on my experience level, I may need to read the other section, which is the explanation section below, to get more guidance about, well, what is a command injection, for example. So it will say, for example, that command injection vulnerabilities take 2 forms. I read through that, I can see some more references into my actual code. Now, I still might be sure exactly what a command injection is. So for any vulnerability, we provide a set of examples with snippets of code in the particular language in which the vulnerability was found. So this was found in Java code, so this snippet is a Java snippet. So I would read through that to get some more information about what command injection is in this particular case. I'll scroll through that. And at the bottom then we've got this section here which shows me some standards and best practices that apply to this particular type of vulnerability. And I might in another window, for example, read more about those too. The instance ID is a unique ID that identifies this type of vulnerability in my code. Or rather, there may be several types of command injections that have been detected, and we basically apply a proprietary algorithm that identifies that particular instance of a command injection in my code. So it's a unique ID. Now the benefit for this is that if later on, for example, I decide actually this is not a real issue, it's a false positive, let's say that's the case, I might suppress it. And even if I insert new code, new methods, whatever, in this same source file, it won't matter because it's a unique signature that identifies that vulnerability, and it will, once it's suppressed, it will not appear to you again. The rule ID is a rule that relates to a rule that's used to identify this type of vulnerability. So we have a security research group, a bunch of very qualified people that identify different types of vulnerabilities that occur, and they generate rule packs. And then within each rule pack there are rules, and those rules are used when scanning the code to identify vulnerabilities and issues. Okay, let's go back up to the top. Now you've looked at the vulnerability, or rather details about this type of vulnerability, but you want to relate it to your code. So if you've provided code in your payload, which is the thing that gets uploaded to Fortify on demand, you can just click the code tab, and now I see my actual code broken up into several areas, 2 areas really. So if I just close this area there for the moment, or rather minimize it, you can see the code a little bit better. This area here shows the data and call flow history that leads up to my vulnerability. So it occurs at line 148, and that's this particular one here in this line of code, this line here within the history. This is going backwards through time. If I click that, then the vulnerabilities occur at line 148, we know, and there is line 148. Now a good tip is to enable this checkbox here, inline analysis trace, because that then shows these little pop-ups which are really handy when relating your code to the call and data flow history here. So typically what I would do is I would work backwards through the code, through this history, to see, and understand, is this a vulnerability or not? There's line 145, which is there, look, there's the other part in the history, and I go right to the top. So we'll go to this particular point here. Now this is where Fortify has detected the vulnerability has started. It started at line 581, when we return out of this method get parameter values, the value that comes out of get parameter values in this object called request, whatever that is. And then in that method itself, get parameter values, takes in a variable called name, which is a string that comes into this method here. Now, whether this is a vulnerability or not is beyond the scope of this video. It doesn't really matter. What I'm showing to you is the concept of what you would do during the review or audit process, if you like. So I still might not be sure whether this is a vulnerability or not. So what I can do is go to the diagram tab, and that shows me in a form which is similar to a state transition diagram in UML, the flow of my code in terms of data and call history leading to the vulnerability which occurs here. So that gives me another view of it, and it may well help me understand, is this a vulnerability or not? I could as well click on this smart fix link. I'm not going to do it because that's actually in another video that I created, but I could click that, and that would show me details of all the command injections that have been detected in this scan and might help me fix those 3 in this particular case in one place. It might, I emphasize it, won't always do that because it depends on the design architecture of your code, if you will. I might then click on the recommendations tab, and that gives me guidance of typically how I might fix a command injection in this particular case. So there will always be a general paragraph about what a command injection is and how it would be fixed. generically in code, some tips, and then references out to different standards and so on that may or may not give you, more guidance if you need it. But Fortify Demand is designed to be a self-service environment, so usually you'll get what you need from Fortify Demand. So right now, I need to decide what I'm going to do. Is this a vulnerability or not? Now, depending on who you are, when you're reviewing this code, you may need to assign this to somebody else in your team. Let's say if you're the dev lead doing this, to go and look at this further. So typically what you'll do, you'll go through a workflow, which involves somebody auditing the code, whether it be a security auditor or a dev lead, whatever it might be, and a developer, let's say. Now, when you're doing the audit, in essence, there's two ways of doing things, if you like. You could do the audit and record that audit internally completely within FOD, or you can create a bug with your integrated bug tracker. So let's say you're the person doing this, as we just have, you're the dev lead. Let's say what you could do is assign it to a developer. So I'm going to assign it to, let's say, me or somebody else. Let's say, let's pick anybody. Let's say Ada Vincent, for example. And I've done that right now. That's all I need to do. I might, if I want to, I could change the severity to high, for example. I'm going to keep it at critical. And I just click Add. And now that should be done. If I go to History, you can see that I changed the user to Vincent Ada, which basically means that now this is assigned to Vincent. Now, that's not necessarily obvious from this view, but what you can do, and this is a quick tip, what you can do is go here, beg your pardon, not that one there, I meant this one. You can go here and you can click this box here or check this box, which is assigned user. If you do that, then that will changes view slightly. And now you will see here, assigned user here is appeared here. These are filters, by the way. If I click on that, I can see what issues have been assigned to Vincent Ada. Now, Vincent Ada is a imaginary user on this particular demo tenant. If I click that, and if I am Vincent Ada, if I was signed in as him, I'm not, but if I was, then I can see the user that are assigned to me. So this one here that's selected is the particular issue that we just looked at a few minutes ago. And now what I might do is I might go and do something similar to what the auditor did, if you see what I mean, or the dev lead. Look at the code, the diagram, recommendations, and so on, and decide, is this a vulnerability or not? I might fix it, in which case, if I do fix it, then what I would do is I would change the status to remediated, and then click Add again. Maybe I might put a comment down here. That will be recorded in the history area, and then that's it. It will then go back to the person that's responsible for auditing, make sure the change has been done properly. That could be the dev lead, for example. If I do that, and I do mark it as remediated, this issue is closed within Fortify Demand. In fact, let's go do that. But before we do that, another scenario might be that I might just say, actually, it's not a real issue at all. It's mitigated in some way or other, in which case I might mark it as will not fix, add a comment down here and add, and so on. But let's mark it as being remediated, and let's do an add. Go back to the history area here. You can see that now it's been set, this developer status has changed to remediated. Now imagine that I'm now the dev lead, for example, again, or the security person. I could then I could go look at it and see, okay, right, do I agree with the change that's been made? I would typically do that using my source control system that I have, SVN, whatever it might be. However you monitor, manage, audit changes and walk through, whatever you do internally. And I might say, yes, okay, I accept that. This is now fixed. That's it. And I would then mark it as being not an issue. Now when I do that and I select not an issue, I'm not going to do that, but if I did do that, if I can do that right now, then what will happen is this issue will now be suppressed. Click Add. This issue is now suppressed. Now, another scenario might be that I might want to submit a bug. Let's sort of go do that for another vulnerability. So right now we're just seeing the vulnerabilities that are assigned to Ada Vincent. So let's decheck that filter. And let's go back to the view that we had before. Now, there are also some SQL injection issues that were detected in this particular scan. Let's go look at one of those, something completely different. And let's go look at maybe this one here in a file called backdoors.java. Now I go through the process. You can see that the way that the information is different here. Different, it's information about a SQL injection, how you would typically fix it, and so on. Imagine I did that. Imagine that again I detected this was a vulnerability. But this time, rather than doing that within Fortify on demand, rather than auditing within that, if you see what I mean, and storing the information within the history and so on, what I want to do is create a bug. So how might I create a bug? Now, by the way, the first thing to know, and often a gotcha to a certain extent, is that you integrate a particular application with a particular bug tracker, meaning that say you use Jira within your environment, you will have a set of Jira projects and you would connect, if you like, your particular application, WG in this particular case, to the particular project that applies within Jira, let's say. Now the way you do that, you would do that in the settings area. Now I need to go back to the WG page rather than the page for the settings for WG application version 5.0, if you see what I mean. Click settings here and I get taken to this particular page, and there's a tab here called bug tracker. If I click that, then that enables me to set up the bug tracker. And I've already done this for this application, but normally it'll be defaulted at no. And I would move it to yes. Then I would select the bug tracker that applies. We support Jira and Micro Focus ALM, for example. Also Bugzilla. You define the URL that connects you, or links you into that that repository. Or rather to that where your tickets are, and then you give the username and password, authenticate yourself, that's it, and you save it and you're ready to rock and roll. I've already done that. So let's go back to where we were. I can do that using the back key, button rather. And now we're looking at the 5.0 releases again. Let's go back and look at the SQL injection that we looked at in backdoors.java, line 148. And let's imagine we're going to go and raise a ticket. So I click submit bug. Then we select the project that applies. Now I've got just this one I want to supply, which is WG. In fact, I'm linked into the WG project when I did the settings. Define a title for the ticket. Now, the default basically is this here with a unique ID that we use internally. You're not probably going to want to use that, or you might link the number in maybe in some way. So you'll give it a subject, give a description, and probably much more detailed than this. But it's useful obviously to know where it occurs in the source code, and that redirect certainly is very useful because you can then segue directly from the ticket to the vulnerability within, it's a hyperlink basically, to the vulnerability in Fortify on demand. Define the severity, and then click submit. Now, one key thing to note, I didn't do it in this particular case, but I can link several vulnerabilities detected or issues detected by Fortify on demand to one ticket. So I could have selected several of these vulnerabilities, for example, all of them in backdoors.java to one ticket in Jira. That's very easy to do. And then they would appear, the other two would appear here as well. Okay, so I'm not going to generate the ticket. I'm just going to click cancel. The thing to know is the two-way integration. Okay, I've clicked cancel. Okay, that largely is how you go about auditing your results for a scan that you perform. You just go through it one by one, generating tickets as appropriate, or using this other auditing approach internally completely within FOD, or a combination of two if that works for you. When you've done that, what you would typically do then is generate a report. I'm not going to do that right now. I have another video on that. but you could generate a report which you then could give to, let's say, the program manager or development manager within your organization, whoever it might be within your business, which would then show you indication of the issues that were found, and basically anything that's been suppressed, any other audit information, and so on. So it's really powerful what you can do. That's how you go audit, review results within Fortify On Demand. I'll see you in the next video.